in that Good afternoon, Fairbanks Chamber members. For those of you I have not met yet, I'm Sabrina Binkley, head of school at Spruce Tree Montessori and chair of the Fairbanks Chamber Board of Directors. I'd like to take a moment, as we do each week, to thank our executive partners whose logos you saw on the screen before we began our program today. These businesses provide a rock-solid foundation for the Chamber and help us to be successful throughout the year. Their support is not only financial. These businesses share knowledge and meaningful experience that help shape and direct our advocacy work and create awareness that drives economic strength and growth for interior Alaska. A full list of our executive partners can be found on our website. Now I'd like to welcome Brenna online to help us recognize our new and renewing members. Brenna?
Thanks, Sabrina. So we have a new member to welcome today, and it is a familiar face around town. So that new member is Alaska Camera. And although they've moved locations, they're still offering rental, printing, canvas printing, anything professional, and for us novices, all the supplies you need and equipment. So they're still around if you need them, and they're now a proud chamber member. We'd also like to thank some renewing members, starting with Carlisle Transportation, James Little, David Mongold, Allstate Insurance, Floorcraft, Iron Dog Inc., iWeave Day Spa, Penguy Promotional Products, Life Sprout Chiropractic, North Star Community Foundation, Office Max and Office Depot, Tailored Restoration Services, and Valerie Theranen. Thank you for renewing your membership. And then we'd also like to welcome some members to our 110% Club, which means that these members also renew their membership, but they contributed above and beyond their membership dues to help us with our advocacy actions. And this week, that's including Denny's, Peak Trust Company, Nortec Environmental Engineering, Pollen Environmental, SOBA, Street Sounds, Technology Group of the North, UAF Alumni Association, Urson Major Distilling, and Worry-Free Alaska Restoration. Thank you for going above and beyond your membership dues to help us. We really appreciate it. And today's membership minute is more of a reminder on things that you can do to be involved with the Chamber. So a lot of people are curious what the Chamber is up to. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, The Scoop, you may know that we have 5 committees that you can attend anytime that you would like. And you can attend as a guest, whether you're a member or not a member. So if you're curious as to what we are talking about here at the Chamber or things that may be of concern to the business community, you can always hop on to one of those virtual committee meetings. And those are also published in our Monday edition of The Scoop if you're curious as to what that week's topic is going to be. You'll learn all sorts of things from educational updates to upcoming, controversial things that may be affecting the business community, as well as just fun information sessions that we think would be good for our members to know about. So if you're ever interested, you can contact Janelle, who is our advocacy program manager, and you can also look at that preview each Monday in The Scoop. All right, back to you, Sabrina.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Brenna. So you may have seen this already, but the Chamber, through our work of our Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, submitted comments to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation as they accepted public comments on the 5% plan. The Fairbanks Chamber is glad to know modeling shows our community is expected to reach attainment of our air quality goals by 2024 as stated in the state's plan. But we would have preferred to see this model incorporate expected results from the new Aurora Energy Solutions wood kiln that increases access to affordable dry wood here in the greater Fairbanks area. We understand these complex models take time to update, but we're very confident that our community has the tools now in place and is on the right track for attainment. You can find our full letter on the Fairbanks Chamber website in our Advocacy Actions section. Our next Board of Directors meeting is Monday, November 16th at noon. And now it's time for Marissa's President and CEO report. Marissa?
Thank you so much, Sabrina. I do have a few announcements for membership today. First, I wanted to start by letting everyone know that tomorrow, if you didn't know this already, which I'm sure you did, is Veterans Day. And normally our community would host a few indoor events that we would typically host, but this year, for obvious reasons, those events are not able to take place as usual. So we're going to go ahead and take our appreciation to the streets, and we wanted to invite you along with us. So tomorrow at noon, you can join us downtown for positive picketing on Veterans Memorial Bridge. You can park either by the Big I in the Fairbanks North Star Borough building, or you can park here by our office in the Key Bank Center in downtown Fairbanks and meet us over up on the bridge. We'll have signs available for the first 25 people that can make it, or you can make your own and bring them. This is a collaborative effort between the Chamber and the Fairbanks North Star Borough. But again, anyone is welcome and encouraged to attend with us to say thank you and show appreciation to veterans living here in our community. Next, I wanted to let everyone know that we are amping up for our annual membership meeting. That's going to take place on Tuesday, December 8th. We're going to be coming to you live from a brand new interactive platform, and we're really excited about all of the new things that we'll be able to offer our members. So there's going to be opportunities for you to connect and network with fellow members, for sponsors to showcase themselves, and for businesses to showcase themselves in an expo format. There's also going to be multimedia presentations and all kinds of opportunities to talk about, share, and celebrate our accomplishments in 2020. We are looking for a few sponsors, so if your business is interested in sponsoring, you could be our lunch sponsor, our Kickstart sponsor, platform sponsor, or network sponsor. And those sponsorship opportunities range from $500 to $3,000. For a full list of those benefits and to find out other ways that you can partner with us, you can email or give Katie a call anytime. Also, make sure that you save the date for December 8th and get registered. We're going to open registration for that event, I expect, by the end of the week, but definitely by the beginning of next week. And then also at the annual meeting, we will be announcing our traditional annual awards. And this year, those nomination forms are up for 2020. And the awards are traditional awards that we give away each year. That's the Bill Stroker Business of the Year Award, the George Nurbas Volunteer of the Year Award, and the Bernice Joseph Education Advocate of the Year Award. So if you know any individuals or businesses that have gone above and beyond in those categories, please make sure to nominate them by Friday, November 20th. Now that's in less than 2 weeks. We did give people a little bit shorter time this year to get those nominations in. But we also know it doesn't really matter what day we tell you about the nominations. We like to be creatures of habit and get those nominations in on the last day. So hopefully you still can take the time to get those nominations turned in. And then also wanted to give everyone a reminder about our Around the Town in 80 Days campaign. We're closing up week 4 today. And tomorrow we'll be announcing our week 5 businesses online. But since you're joining us here live today, I'm going to go ahead and give you a sneak peek at what our week 5 businesses are for next week. So again, our weeks for the purposes of this campaign start on Wednesdays, which is tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, you've got Bagels and Brew, Goldie's AK, Great Alaska Bowl Company, Santa Stitches, and Westmark Fairbanks Hotel and Conference Center. Also, don't forget to use the hashtag 80daysoflocal on Facebook and Instagram for chances to win fabulous weekly prizes. And for each of the receipts that you save from our featured businesses, those will get you into an entry for our grand prize drawing for a pair of Alaska Airlines tickets to be used in 2021. Remember, when you support your own economy, you're supporting your friends, your neighbors, and your neighbors' friends. So please enjoy yourselves and participate in Around the Town in 80 days. And for my final announcement today, for those of you that have not heard yet, I will be departing the Fairbanks Chamber at the end of the year to take a role with Foundation Health Partners. Being the CEO of the Fairbanks Chamber has been an incredibly rewarding and simply amazing opportunity. This organization has an outstanding board of directors that is rooted in the role for governance. We have a dedicated team of individuals from across all sectors of our chamber, sitting at our committee tables and guiding the advocacy work. We also have a wildly talented and dedicated staff that works day in and out to carry out the mission and carry on the events and programs of the Fairbanks Chamber. The next leader has a very bright future ahead of them, and so does this organization. If you are that person, or if you know that person, please be sure to visit the Fairbanks Chamber website to find the full job description and application directions in the About Us section. I look forward to helping the new CEO transition successfully into their new role, and I'm here to answer questions anyone might have. You can find details about everything that I talked about today on our website at fairbankschamber.org. Thank you so much, and back to you, Sabrina.
Thanks so much, Marissa, and of course we wish you all the best along your journey. Now for our main presentation. We're very interested to hear from ACUASI today as they share their research with us. The potential applications of their vision and work are numerous, and when you factor in the ways they can benefit our Alaskan way of life, from research to healthcare, infrastructure to remote access, it's hard to not get excited about the future of our state and the amazing work happening at our own UAF. Dr. Catherine F. Cahill is the director of the Alaska Center for Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration, or ACUASI, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. ACUASI is the University of Alaska's Center of Excellence for UAS and leads the FAA's Alaska UAS test site and the FAA's University of Alaska Fairbanks Beyond program site, and is a core university of the FAA's Center of Excellence for UAS Research, or ASSURE for short. Gotta love those acronyms. Kathy has a BS in Applied Physics from the University of California, Davis, and an MS and a PhD in Atmospheric Science from the University of Washington and the University of Nevada, Reno, respectively. After a Fulbright fellowship to Ireland to study transatlantic air pollution transport, Kathy migrated north to Alaska to join UAF. She is an expert in the long-range transport of air pollution, and her past research focused on atmospheric aerosols and their impacts on visibility, global climate, and human health. Kathy began working with unmanned aircraft in 2006 as a way to analyze the vertical distribution of air pollution, and in 2015, after returning from a 19-month congressional fellowship, she became the director of ACUASI. Thank you so much, Dr. Cahill, for joining us today.
Thank you, Sabrina. It is a real pleasure to be here, and I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming and listening to hear about the good things we're doing for the state and for the interior of Alaska. So as Sabrina said, I'm Kathy Cahill. I'm the director for ACUASI, the Alaska Center for Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration at UAF. And before I really jump into what we're doing, I really think it's a good idea to actually talk a little bit about that acronym. So next slide, please. So what on earth actually is a UAS? It's an unmanned aircraft system, and it's composed of a bunch of different parts. So you'll hear UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. That is just the aircraft, and that is the cool, sexy part that everybody loves. But the reality is that's just a pickup truck. And until you actually are doing something with it, have a payload on it that is collecting data, for example, a camera looking at, wildlife or a pipeline or something, all you're doing is burning expensive holes in the sky. So it really is a full system. You have the aircraft, you have to have your payload on it. You need to integrate that payload. So you need to have an engineering team and for the system integration. You need to be able to talk to the payload in order to get the data back. You have to be able to command and control the aircraft. And you need to have a really, really good crew in order to do all of the above. So altogether, that is an unmanned aircraft system, or a UAS. And they're commonly known as drones, and we really don't like that appellation because it implies that there's no intelligence. When we're flying an unmanned aircraft, we always have a pilot in the loop. And next slide, please. And we do a whole range of different aircraft here at UAF. So I've just thrown a couple of them up here. The top two are small commercial DJI products. The middle left is the Sea Hunter. She is a 300-pound twin-engine aircraft with 12.5 hours endurance. We have Responder to the right. It's a helicopter. It's purely electric. Bottom right is the Sentry. She's the one who looks most like an aircraft for all of those of you who are pilots. And bottom left is the Perimeter. That is a quadcopter, but it's a hybrid. It's a gas electric with 5.5 hours endurance. So we are constantly testing new aircraft and new unmanned aircraft to see what fits for various missions, what can work in Alaska. We have a unique environment, and we are doing a lot of testing to make sure that whatever comes into our airspace can work up here, and we don't have to worry about failures and impacts to people in general aviation. So that's what an unmanned aircraft is. So what is ACUASI? Next slide, please. So ACUASI is the Alaska Center for Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration, and we are the University of Alaska's Unmanned Aircraft Research Program. We've been doing unmanned aircraft research operations here in Alaska since 2001. In 2012, the Board of Regents formally named us as basically Center of Excellence for UAS for the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We have really three prime missions that we're trying to do. We want to assist the FAA in the safe integration of unmanned aircraft into the national airspace system. We want to support Alaskan and Arctic UAS users, and I will admit I have a bias towards Interior Alaska for some reason. And of course, we want to be able to support the university and the scientists and the governmental agencies up here in terms of conducting scientific research. Next slide, please. So our ultimate goal, and I've told the FAA this numerous times, is we want complete integration of unmanned aircraft systems with manned aircraft in the national airspace system. So that picture right there is our Sea Hunter in Nunavut, Canada. And yes, that is a major cargo aircraft landing on the runway we are using with Sea Hunter. That is what we want to see. We want to see full integration. And key word here is safe. So we are working very, very hard with the FAA to develop the policies, procedures, rules, regulations, technologies to have this integration be safe so there is never a manned-unmanned aircraft collisions. Next slide, please. So who is ACUASI? Who are we? We're a combination of veterans and former defense contractors, science and engineering faculty, staff, and students, pilots. All of our unmanned aircraft pilots are manned aircraft pilots. This is incredibly important. We need to be able to speak FAA. We need to have our pilots be able to communicate with the general aviation community. They're one of the key stakeholders for this operation in Alaska. So, you know, if we have a case where somebody wants to understand what we're doing, we can have our pilots talk to their pilots. And that communication is incredibly important. We also understand that there are people in the airspace already, and it's not just a toy that we're throwing up without any risks. We want to make sure that we are integrating with what is already there, and we can minimize the risks by the entrance. I like to tell people that unmanned aircraft going into the manned aircraft space is like cars going into the horse and buggies. There's already a set of rules for the road, and you need to be able to work inside those rules to have things work safely. We have an airframe and power plant mechanic, so we do understand about maintenance and the requirements to maintain FAA policies, procedures, standardization, maintenance, all of those other good things that ensure reliability of the aircraft. We have an FAA air traffic control flight service specialist with 30 years experience. He is our FAA whisperer. So he is the person who can talk with the FAA one-on-one using the same language to talk about how do we put in the right paperwork with the correct safety case. Translation, us explaining why what we're doing is safe, that the FAA can approve the operations we want to do. We got business developers, embedded contractors. All in all, we're about 20 people. Next slide, please. So how are we moving forward? So this is a classic Venn diagram. You know, I'm a scientist, I like Venn diagrams. And this is actually very important because we have 3 of the major FAA programs here. And this figure is current as of 2 weeks ago. We have 1 of the 7 FAA test sites. We run ranges actually in Alaska, Oregon, Hawaii, Mississippi, Kansas, and now California, where we are helping with the test and evaluation of aircraft. So this is a case where people are flying under our auspices and they're testing aircraft and determining what works, what doesn't work, how to move things forward, and how to establish the reliability of the aircraft. We also are part of the Center of Excellence, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. The key thing about the FAA Center of Excellence is we are one of the core schools, and there are only 22 of them. And in that particular case, we are doing academic research on how to do the safety analyses for the FAA. And the far right one is the FAA Integration Pilot Program. And that program was started by President Trump 3 years ago. It sunsetted a week and a half ago. And it was part of what we used in order to really actually make some strides forward in the safe integration. Now, why do I have this as a Venn diagram? Is one other state has all three of these programs, that is North Dakota. But we are the only organization in the country where all three of these programs are under a single organization. That makes ACUASI and UAF incredibly unique and incredibly valuable, because we can leverage the expertise from all of these different programs to support the overall effort. And to be honest, the Integration Pilot Program and the test site came with no FAA money. The Center of Excellence does come with FAA money, so we can use what we do there to support some of these other efforts. Next slide, please. So this is the slide as of today. So a week and a half ago, US Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao made the announcement that the Integration Pilot Program sites, and there were 9 of them, were given the opportunity to continue on into a new program after the program expired, as according to President Trump's executive order. That program is called Beyond, and we were one of the 8 sites that agreed to go forward. This is incredibly important. The FAA has made a 4-year commitment to the University of Alaska Fairbanks and to the state of Alaska, the partnership we represent there, to move unmanned aircraft forward in the national airspace system with us. This is accelerated approvals. This is working one-on-one with the FAA to determine what technologies will work to ensure the safety. And it's an iterative conversation, which you normally don't get. Normally, if you put in a request to waive a particular requirement, you put it in, they may ask a couple questions, and then you get a yes or no. You don't get a why. We, working with them, will iterate numerous times until we can get to a point where we get the yes. It's an incredibly important program and is really going to help move things forward for Interior Alaska. Next slide, please. So the Center of Excellence is one of our key components, and we're involved in multiple projects. And some of them have to deal with ensuring the safety of cargo operations. And we're talking anything from the Amazon, tiny packages, up to what we want to do in Alaska, which is multiple hundreds of miles delivery of large amounts of cargo. Minimizing risks associated with operations on or around airport surfaces. This is important for us because we actually have established a relationship with Fairbanks International Airport and are hoping to fly some of our larger aircraft off of the airport surfaces in the next, we hope, year. So you might get to see some pretty aircraft taking off and landing at Fairbanks International. We want to make sure that we are working on the project where we're reducing risk during hazard response efforts. This really is a coordination project. State, local, federal agencies. If there's an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, how do we leverage all of the different types of unmanned aircraft and manned aircraft that these agencies have to get the best look at what is happening, do search and rescue, do evaluations of if railroad bridges have collapsed. All of those things we can do, using unmanned aircraft to supplement their current techniques. So this is a place where we can help advance the safety and the response to any natural hazard, and also oil spills, terrain derailments, and other man-made hazards. And flying beyond visual line of sight, BVLOS. You're going to hear me say BVLOS a lot in this presentation. And what it means is you're flying outside of the line of sight of the pilot who is controlling the aircraft. Now, beyond visual line of sight has that definition. So you'll see lots of reports saying we've flown beyond the visual line of sight. They lie. They've flown beyond visual line of sight of the pilot in command, but they have observers who keep the aircraft in line of sight at all times. We refer to that as daisy-chained observers. University of Alaska Fairbanks, as I will explain to you later, is one of the only programs who has been able to actually fly beyond visual line of sight of the pilot and all observers using only electronic means of detection. It was the first we achieved a year and a half ago with Alaska Pipeline Service Company and a bunch of other organizations, and I'll talk more about that later. Next slide, please. So that beyond visual line of sight is really important, and it's very difficult to do actually in the United States because of the safety case. But we have been working with Transport Canada to do beyond visual line of sight operations And they are using us as a test case for a larger aircraft that they are looking at buying. And they want to be able to operate out of airports in the northern parts of Canada. Transport Canada has a surveillance mission. They want to look at ships, whales, oil spills, the whole works. And so we are their test aircraft for what are the rules and regulations and the policies and procedures that they need to implement in order to have the safe integration. So we have been working with Transport Canada for the past 4 years, and we are flying off of actual airport surfaces, commercial airports with commercial air traffic on a regular basis every summer. And we have done road and land surveys, we have done marine mammal surveys, we've looked at ships for them. And all of this has been with Transport Canada and NAV Canada. And NAV Canada is basically the regulators like the FAA. So we have been working hand in hand with them to actually do long distance beyond visual line of sight operations. Next slide, please. So an example of this is Inuvik in 2019. And we went ahead and mapped the entire Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway, a good portion of the Dempster Highway, and did beluga whale surveys in Mackenzie Bay. This was a major operation. We flew 42.4 hours, 3,376 nautical miles beyond visual line of sight. We took over 80,000 high-resolution images and stitched them together to create a three-dimensional model of the entire highway and its shoulders so that they could look at where things were eroding, how it was impacting salmon streams. It was a major operation, and it was all that beyond visual line of sight. You cannot do that distance inside the United States outside of restricted area. So this was a case where we were integrating with airport operations, with general aviation. It was a major achievement. Next slide, please. So here we have the Inuvik, some of the infrastructure images, and you'll notice the height at which we have taken these images. So, you've got a case here where we can fly quite high above a construction site, a road, etc., and still with the high resolution camera get a tremendous amount of information. Next slide, please. And this is an example. This year, we actually were declared essential to Canada, which meant they actually let Americans into the country, and they let us stay for a while. We went to Gaspé, Canada, which is on the East Coast, and flew out over the St. Lawrence Seaway. We were declared essential, so they eased the way in terms of us not getting all sorts of grief for the fact we happen to have United States license plates on the vehicle and trailer, but we're operating inside their country. We flew 5,000 nautical miles beyond visual line of sight during a month, and this is an example of kind of the flight path. If you know our tail number, UA372, N372 UA, you can go ahead and stick in the tail number of our aircraft in any flight tracking software, and we show up just like any commercial American Airlines, Alaska Airlines, any other airlines planes. So if you know we're out working, we can go ahead, you can plug in and you can watch what we're up to. Next slide, please. What were we doing? We were taking photos like this. So this is a 45 megapixel camera image of the ocean. Really, really exciting, huh? Next slide, please. We were using artificial intelligence to analyze that image, and inside that image, this is a whale underwater that was picked up by the artificial intelligence. And this is part of what we're trying to do is right now, they're looking for North Atlantic right whales in the shipping lanes. If they find them, they have to slow down the shipping, and that creates a challenge in terms of the economic development in the Great Lakes. So they've been flying Dash 8s, which are manned aircraft with marine mammal observers on them to spot the whales. We are proving to them that with an artificial intelligence on an unmanned aircraft, we can actually do better than they can with their manned observers in spotting these whales and helping keep the seaways clear. Canada, of course, has 5 rules of purchasing in Canada, which are don't buy American, buy Canadian, don't buy American. And we have a sole source contract from Transport Canada to do this work. They are trying to get the Canadian unmanned aircraft industry to actually do this work. This has been kind of entertaining. They've done a competition for it, and guess what? Nobody can do what the University of Alaska Fairbanks can do. So it looks like next summer, we're going back again. So next slide, please. So we also do it up here. We have done work where we have done Arctic operations, where we have flown from, in this case, it was Kuparik. Thank you, ConocoPhillips, for letting us use your absolutely wonderful airport. Flying north out over the Arctic Ocean. Remember I said the beyond visual line of sight? We can't do it in the US. We actually had to have an aircraft chase our plane until it hit the warning area. So we had a manned aircraft that supported our aircraft operations, but up top on that first picture, you can see snow blowing on ice. You can see our team at Kuparik. You can see our Sea Hunter actually flying. If you look closely, you can actually see Spy Island in that image. So you're looking at oil and gas infrastructure from above. And we've got some nice images to the right, one of which shows the challenges we have with icing of our various equipment. Next slide, please. All of that, of course, goes to beyond visual line of sight. So what are we doing to enhance the safety of these beyond visual line of sight operations? We're doing what's called detect and avoid. We are working with companies that are developing systems that will spot another aircraft in the air and then either send our pilot a warning or automatically move to avoid that aircraft so that we get out of the way of manned aircraft, which the way the rules or regulations, an unmanned aircraft must always give way to manned aircraft. So this is a technology that is incredibly important for our state to be able to do missions of import here. We've conducted some detect and avoid flight campaigns using multiple different systems up at the Poker Flat Research Range. What we have discovered is that, we can fly various manned aircraft, helicopters, fixed wings, etc., and other unmanned aircraft against these systems and identify them and track them. We also attract F-15s when we do this. So apparently 4 radars in a 360 configuration, plus a notice to airmen, we'll get F-15s to come look at what you're doing. Next slide, please. So the advantage to these detect and avoid systems is that we've got enough experience with them. We were working through the integration pilot program with the FAA, that the FAA actually granted us a waiver. It was the first of its kind ever given for under what's called the small unmanned aircraft rule, in which you can only fly under 400 feet during daylight in visual line of sight without having to request a waiver. We got the first waiver to actually fly beyond visual line of sight with no human eyes required on the aircraft inside domestic airspace. So that waiver was incredibly important. First in the country, true BVLOS. Next slide. This is how many people it actually takes to do that mission. In terms of people on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline right-of-way right there. Far left is Jacques Cloutier of Alaska Pipeline Service Company, who has been fabulous in terms of helping us do this. In that site, you will happen to notice we happen to have a lot of FAA people present. These are not people just from Alaska. These are people from headquarters. That is how high profile this integration pilot program is and what we were doing. The guy on the far right with the hands on the hips who looks like the cat that ate the canary is the person who signed off on our operation. So this was important. We had multiple detect and avoid technologies. We were able to ensure the safety of the airspace. And this was, I told you, an amazing feat. We went all of 3.91 miles beyond visual line of sight. So baby steps here in the US, but what we're learning in the Canada and the other places, we are feeding back in to move this forward. Next slide, please. So where are we going here? So that was done under the integration pilot program. A lot of things got put on hold this year because of COVID, made it very difficult to get people up here to do some of the work. So we are moving forward under Beyond. Now, that 5-mile corridor we initially had, the FAA has extended it to 20 miles. So as long as we have ground-based radars out, we can go ahead and test beyond visual line of sight operations over the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. This is incredibly important for Alaska Pipeline Service Company, for Hillcorp Alaska, for a bunch of different organizations, because it gives us a chance to test various payloads and detect and avoid technology to really build up the concept of operations for doing linear infrastructure monitoring, for monitoring pipelines, power lines, anything along those lines. So this has been an important step forward. So of course, once we get to exercise that 20 miles, you can guess that we're going to ask for more than that. Our goal is under Beyond within the next 4 years to fly the entire Trans-Alaska Pipeline using an aircraft like our Sea Hunter. Next slide, please. Cargo delivery. So this is a big one. Unlike Amazon, which has a last mile problem, Alaska has a last hundreds of miles problem. And COVID-19, of course, greatly exacerbated this, because you don't want to send a pilot into a community and risk them transmitting COVID-19 to that community where you don't have the healthcare infrastructure. We also had Raven go bankrupt. They carry about 70% of the interior Alaska cargo. So suddenly your communities were not being serviced, and we had a case where mail and cargo were building up. Passengers took priority. So it really showed the weakness in our air cargo delivery system. The other thing about air cargo is if you can increase the turns, translation, get more flights out there, you can get cargo out there more frequently, you can get fresh vegetables, you can get other things out there, and hopefully you can reduce the costs. Getting milk and diapers into the communities is not a sexy operation, but it is incredibly important for Alaska. And if we can decrease the costs on this and improve aviation safety by not risking bush pilots trying to go in when it's risky in order to get cargo in, we can do a lot to actually improve aviation safety here in Alaska. So we are working with Beyond to move this forward. And our initial goal is to make Fairbanks the UAS hub for Alaska. Don't tell the rest of the state, but that's where we want to go first. Next slide, please. And in order to do this, you actually do have to have a Part 135 air carrier certificate. So we have a Fairbanks company, Unmanned Systems Alaska, has applied for one of them. They will be one of the first companies in the country to have a Part 135 for unmanned. Right now, there are only 2 of them that have ever been given. It's UPS Flight Forward and Google Wing. So Unmanned Systems Alaska will enter some very rarefied territory. We are also working with current manned aircraft Part 135 air carriers to expand their capability into the unmanned as well. So we are really hoping to lift the entire air cargo community here in the interior of Alaska and bring in unmanned as a part of their portfolio. So we are working with local companies, and that's part of why having the nice hub here in Fairbanks works really well for us. So next slide, please. One of the first things we're doing, because FAA likes it when you start small and work bigger, is we're going to do medical supply delivery. We're working with Foundation Health Partners, Unmanned Systems Alaska, and the FAA to actually do medical supply delivery between Tanana Valley Clinic and the Fairbanks Memorial Hospital. We're excited about this. We are hoping that this first operations will occur within 6 months. For those of you who happen to be aviation geeks, we're talking about type certification here. What that means basically is that we will have the FAA stamp of approval that the aircraft is airworthy. It does not create a hazard on the ground or a flight risk. So we will be able to maintain command and control, and everything will go well. Again, Fairbanks leads the way. We're excited about this. Next slide, please. So really where we're trying to go is we want to make sure that we are flying large UAS from airports under a variety of conditions to make sure we demonstrate the capabilities. We can test business cases. We have the fact that we are moving forward towards actual operations. This is not just pie in the sky, it's never going to happen. This is coming, and we are going to lead the way here. We're developing the technology, policies, and procedures to make sure that this is safe. We can do long-term monitoring of infrastructure. We can do the monitoring of roads, bridges, power lines. We can do cargo delivery. And we're going to be able to do it safely because we're working on that technology. So with that, I'm going to say thank you all for paying attention. We're very excited about this. Last slide, please. And we look forward to working with everybody here in Fairbanks to really move this forward and to make sure that we, as I said, take Fairbanks in the interior and continue to really lead the way with the FAA and our other partners.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Cahill. So now we'll go ahead and take some questions from our audience. If you have them, go ahead and type them right into the chat. And Janelle, would you go ahead and share a few questions?
I will do that. So we have a couple that have come in. One of them is, says, your program is a great story for Fairbanks and for UAF in particular. What risks is the program exposed to by the state's budget issues, and particularly how that impacts the University of Alaska's budget issues?
Okay, so we do get a little bit of state funding through legislative ads that were added to the base state budget. We have taken budget cuts associated with those, as the university has taken really across the board budget cuts. We are using the state of Alaska funds to support these efforts for the state of Alaska. And with the FAA in the Center of Excellence, when we get money, we have to provide a match. And usually we can get in kind from various partners. But when we first write that proposal, we have to guarantee that there is match. And we use some of the state funds to be able to do that and to help support these efforts. And so it has been something where, you know, Transport Canada, we can use that work then to offset some of that funding. So we don't actually have to put state of Alaska funds in there. So it does hurt us, but we do have a lot of external funding coming in because we have been very successful in our grant writing. And we are working with public, private, federal, you name it, agencies, companies, to try to bring funding in to make sure that we are self-supporting. But as the University of Alaska budget gets hit, you know, a lot of people are focusing more on the academics, and that it does put us a little bit at risk.
Definitely something that the Chamber is interested in, is how the university and the community work together. Another question that came up is, and I apologize, I got a little bit lost in the acronym, so maybe you can remind us. It says, what is the university doing to change regulation on BVLOS? BVLOS?
BVLOS, yep, so beyond visual line of sight. So we are working with the FAA to develop the technologies that will guarantee that we can do BVLOS safely. So we are doing a lot of that testing strategy. And we're doing operations that actually demonstrate it and what different strategies we can take. You know, if flying within 50 feet of the pipeline guarantees we will not collide with, you know, manned aircraft, maybe that might be an operation you'd consider. And that's part of what they're doing in Kansas. They're flying within 50 feet of power lines. Can cause trouble with crop dusters. So you do have to be very careful. The FAA is very concerned about safety here, and they want to have multiple different technologies ensuring the safety. So you do what's called operational and tactical. So you plan your operations to minimize the conflict, and then you actually use technology to make it even safer. So they are listening to us. We are working hand in hand with them to enable these technologies.
It's exciting to hear about Fairbanks being on the cutting edge here. One more question that came in says, these are some really exciting test cases. Which of the services you mentioned, if any, does ACUASI plan to provide long-term to the public and or private sectors?
Okay, so remember, we are University of Alaska. We are not allowed to compete with commercial interests. So we are doing a lot of the pilot projects, and we'll be spinning them off to Fairbanks and other Alaska businesses. So the reason that University of Alaska Fairbanks can't carry a Part 135 certificate is that is a commercial operation. And that would put us directly in conflict with some of the taxpayers who are putting money into our program. So we will be supporting the companies that are moving forward on this. So what we are doing is a benefit to Alaska, to the interior and the commercial enterprise, but it's not something that we can routinely do as the university.
Okay, well,
Trust
thank
me,
you
my
for that.
budget would be a lot better if I could compete commercially.
We'll see what we can do on that score. No, not promising anything. But that's all the questions that have come in online.
Okay, thanks for your
Well, I
help.
want to say thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And of course, you can find my email, etc., through the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I'm sure the chamber can get you any information if you want to reach out.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Dr. Cahill, and thanks, Janelle, for your help with the questions. What amazing information, and I love hearing about the cutting edge work that UAF is doing with you guys. Thanks to all our members for joining us today. We're so proud to be able to provide these faux luncheons to further connect and communicate with our greater Fairbanks community. We hope to see you next week when we'll receive a COVID-19 update for Fairbanks from our Alaska superstar, Dr. Ann Zink, and she'll be joined by our own Fairbanks favorite, Dr. Laura Bruner. So thanks again, Fairbanks. I see out my window right now it's snowing again, so drive safely and be well.